On to Paris instead.
I will fine. I'm gonna give you your surprise gift early.
Huh?
Guess what? You're going to Paris.
How?
Well, I've been saving mucho dinero all year in insurance thanks to Pronto Insurance.
Let's just skip the quinceañera and go straight to Paris.
Call your padrinos right now.
Okay, yeah.
Ask your agent how you can start saving with Pronto. Best price in town.
We live here. We work here. We love it here. Look for your motors in Brownsville, Texas. We're here for you.
Baby, just listen to me.
Escucha.
Do everything with speed.
Prontísimo.
Out of home business or
Flexible.
insurance for all your needs.
Barato.
You say you just got a new boat. Come on by and we'll give you a free quote.
Prontísimo.
Okay, who's singing? Me or you? Hello?
Accesible.
I'm out.
Ask your agent how you can start saving with Pronto. Best price in town.
When you study local at Texas Southmost College, you can choose from over 50 associate degree programs, certificates, and workforce training programs. Register now for summer and fall classes and study local at Texas Southmost College.
Pleasant good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another show here on Fruia Motors in Brownsville, Texas. It's Talking Sports on a Wednesday afternoon on Rio Sports Live. I'm Joe Bowling with Kevin Narro. Jacob Young will join us and talk a little soccer. We are coming off the heels of a very busy weekend, and we are on the verge of ramping up into some big softball games this week, some baseball coverage. And but again, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone that attended and was a part of our basketball showcase. 160-plus players all converged from Dallas, from El Paso, from the Coastal Bend, from the RGV. 18 games, a slam dunk competition, a three-point shootout, and just a great weekend of basketball. So my thanks to everyone that was a part of it. On my side, on the crew side, everyone that was a piece of that, that helped bring the broadcast live to the fans. Appreciation from me personally, but again, the fans that came and got to see the basketball and the players that got to participate. What an event this year, Kevin Narro, the basketball showcase.
Yeah, I thought it went really well, and it was a 3-day deal. I felt that we all improved in it. There's a lot of things that we learned from last year's showcase into this year's showcase. I felt that the talent was there. I thought I had more fun this year than I did last year, and I know a lot of the kids certainly had fun too. They really liked the jerseys. I know the shoot-around shirts were a hit. I know the kids really enjoyed that, and just really the camaraderie that the kids got to know each other. Alexa Torres from the Lightning, she's from Brownsville Veterans. She's going to be rooming with Dana Sedana, who's from Econ and played with the Rebels. So when they got to play against each other, there was a lot of fun between those two. They really enjoyed that. Maddie Smith, also from the Lightning. She's like, I knew some of these girls, but now I know some of them more on a personal basis. So there was a lot of positive with the showcase. I know the dunk contest I thought was a success. I thought that was pretty fun. David Clower wound up winning it, right? I mean, from the Valley, we had an all-Valley sweep, really. Clower won the dunk contest. Alexa Torres won the 3-point shootout. And Mando Trevino won the 3-point shootout on the boys' side. So I thought that was a great way to kick things off. And again, I know last year we wanted to have that, and we were foolish enough to think, well, maybe we can squeeze that in between the games, and it just didn't happen. But again, just learning from last year into this year, we made that into a Friday night event, and it made the trip worth it for the folks that were not from the Valley and the people that came down from out of town, that they came down for a 3-day event. And I thought Friday was successful. There was so many people there, and then going into Saturday, I think you and I, once the first whistle blew and we saw the kids playing ball, we saw them, they were wearing their uniforms, I breathed a little easier, and I'm sure you did too.
Yeah, I did. And certainly when you're talking about bringing in kids from El Paso that traveled over from the Da Vinci High School, and then Leadership Prep bringing in the kids from Dallas, we expanded greatly compared to last year's showcase. And the talent level was certainly there. I think that the kids that came in from outside of the Rio Grande Valley got to see a taste of perhaps the Valley is a little better in basketball than you think. They may not have the size, they may not have the athleticism, but the shooters, the protecting the ball, the defenders, all came into play. And again, the college coaches that were able to watch it online that saw that, the couple of college coaches that were up in the rafters sitting up high away from people. I made 2 trips up to the top of that arena on Sunday to talk to coaches that I spotted. And they were all equally impressed at the fact that, we're seeing athletes, we're seeing shooters, we're seeing ball handlers, we're seeing interior players, we're seeing players that can play on the perimeter, we're seeing youth as young as 8th grade competing and producing, and we're seeing some seniors getting a last chance, and the mixture of talent up and down, just an overall success on the showcase. 18 games. If you had to circle one, Kevin, I would have to look at day one, in which Mo Molina and Coach Orlando Garcia going at it with the Storm taking on the Racers. Some would call it the upset of the day. But just watching those two coaches, both of them came up to me afterwards and were like, all right, Joe, I don't mind doing this, but, man, I wasn't – I didn't sign up to coach in games like this one more time, because it was triple digits in the scoring. It was coming down to the last couple of possessions before it was decided, and the two coaches, having a lot of fun, but just the history of those two Hall of Fame coaches going at it. Molina, Garcia, and the history even going back when Mo Molina was at McCallum Memorial. Coach Garcia was having all those successful seasons at San Isidro, and he told me, he's like, the UIL schools would schedule us as a small school, San Isidro, but once we beat a couple of them, and he was talking about the Edinburghs and the Vellas and the McAllens, he said once we beat them, then they wouldn't schedule us again. He said, but Mo Molina was always the one at McCallum Memorial that said, Rolando, I want your best teams. I want to keep playing you. And so then for them two to match up in that game, that was the game of the day on Saturday, I thought.
Yeah, no, Rolando Garza, he did a great job, and he coached it last year as well. Coach Mo Erasmo Molina also coached it last year. I think that was really the upset of the entire showcase. The way the crowds kind of just flooded in to watch the show that the Storm were putting on with all the dunking and all those fancy moves, and then I was between, court 1 and court 2. I think the Rebels were playing, the Rebels may have been playing the Breeze at that time, and I was kind of going back and forth, and Mark had came over, and he's like, man, I got so many dunk shots, that team's putting on a show. It's a 27-point game, and I was like, well, it's kind of what we may have expected. And then I found my way checking in on the second half, and I saw that the Racers were only down by 12. They were only down by 10. And then that's when you and I just kind of stayed put on that baseline and hey, they just might pull this off. And I mean, they made so many big shots down the stretch, the Racers did. And just for the way they upset them, how they upset them, when I was telling because my dad actually shot that game on the camera, and he was blown away. And when we were talking about it back at home, I said, Dad, if the Racers and the Storm were to play 10 more times again, the Storm wins 10 more the next 10 times.
Yes.
It was like that little Giants, it just takes one time, and that's all they needed. And, boy, they certainly got them. And I think that kind of shook the guys from the Storm that, hey, the Valley can play some basketball. I know that after the game, some of the kids went up to Coach Garza and Mario, Coach Alvarado. They were just saying, like, man, like, you guys are just scrappy. You guys just kept shooting, and you guys really played as a team. And like they earned some serious respect. And in theory, politically, we were looking at a Rebel Storm finals. That wasn't the case, and the Racers wound up making the finals. But certainly on the boys' side, that was the game like to watch that day. I thought earlier in the day, the game for me was when the Lightning came back and beat the Storm by 6. We saw Nora Zamaripa really make some adjustments down that stretch and put some kids in position to win, and they wound up winning 76-70. I thought Layla Salas played really well for her that first game. She had 16 points in that first win. But for me, the day one winner obviously was the Racers. And the day one winner on the girls' side, it wasn't the Rebels. For me, it was the Lightning.
The Lightning, and that was a game in which Coach Z was a little late getting to the game.
Yes.
And they were down 12-1. And and someone on the sideline, I was like, oh. And they're like, just wait. Coach is about to get here.
Yeah.
and she stepped in, and her girls responded. And that was one of the things about it that we created in the showcase was the fact that, yes, we want to have fun. Yes, we want to showcase the athletes, but we also want to make that little competitive part of attaching a trophy to it. And, boy, the coaches really stepped up.
No, they did.
In making adjustments and understanding the transitions of the playing time. Last year we had issues with, individuals coming up to me afterwards saying, my son or my daughter wasn't able to play enough. I wish I could have saw him more in the fourth quarter. I wish I could have saw him here. But the rotation that I had set up, albeit the first time through, the coaches were like, what are you trying to do? And I was like, just trust the process. It's going to work. But the rotation worked across the board. The parents that got to see their kids got to see them play in every quarter, got to see them play in the fourth quarter, and then gave the coaches a chance to coach for the last for the win, and it just played out.
Yeah, it certainly did, and that was really the theme these last 2 weeks. Once these coaches had their hands on rosters, once coaches were having practices, as they understood the roles, the shot clock, so they strategized with that. They strategized with their rotations, which I feel they adjusted to that as the games went on. Some were ahead of the curve, and they laid out, which I was calling a lineup card, 1 through 5, 1 through 5, 1 through 5. And some coaches really did a good job on picking where and when to put certain kids in. And then you saw that pay off, particularly in the Racers and in the Breeze game on the girls' side, where Maddie Martinez's group, I think that may have been the second group, every time that group came in, you were either going to be up or you were going to be down. And in this case, the Racers were down in that game. And when Maddie came in, there were 2 separate runs by them, each of them from Maddie's point, where they cut into the lead. And then in the second rotation, when she came in that second half, they took the lead for good, and that was it. And I know Polo was looking at me like, hey, aren't there substitutions? And I'm like, well, yeah, but you got to weather 2 more minutes of this storm. So now you got to figure out how to manage these next 2 minutes and adjust and move girls into certain spots. But, that's the beauty of it with this rotation deal. And, unfortunately, we had some kids get hurt. Some kids, a kid fouled out in an instance. The next day, some kids had track, so they weren't able to go. So, there were some adjustments that we all had to make. Okay, so what if the kid fouls out? Then how am I gonna move her up? So I thought you did a very good job on figuring that out on the fly, because I was like, don't ask me. I
Yeah.
don't know. And see, and it's crazy because, I mean, these coaches are in it to win it.
Yes.
And they were coaching their tails off. And once they saw something that didn't look right in a rotation, or they weren't doing the rotation right, I mean, they were honest.
They picked it on
Yeah,
real quick. Yep.
and good for them. Good for them. And, I thought, like I said, Saturday was a success. There were so many people there. But that was the game that stood out for me on Saturday. And, the Rebels on the girls' side, they did what they were supposed to do. They won their games.
And even they were pushed in day one, though.
They were pushed in the second game against the Breeze. They just kind of ran out of some size. The Breeze did, but I thought the Breeze played really well. Daniela Salcedo was an alternate for us. She's a junior. She's going to be one of the better bigs, if not the best big we have next year in the Valley on the girls' side. She really impressed. Heather May, too, as well. Those two in the middle. I thought they played really well. But they just, the Rebels were the stacked team, as everyone was calling it, and people were upset, like, well, the Rebels are stacked. And then I'm like, okay, but you just saw the Racers beat the Storm.
Yep.
And that just defied the whole logic of it. Like, the Storm, in theory, were just as stacked as the Rebels.
Yep.
And one can say that the Storm were better than the Rebels on the boys' side. So I'm like, well, you kind of just, disproved your your point. But, overall, that Saturday, it was a lot of fun. Like I said, once that first whistle went off and we saw the games going and we saw the kids with their uniforms, and everything found its rhythm. That's what I was telling Mark. I was like, watch, just let the first game get underway, and everything else will flow. Everything else will flow. And Andrew Garza, shout out to him. He worked his butt off too on helping us with an extra table or with extra chairs on the bench. Lori Bettis and Lark Starkey, those were our two trainers. Doc Lee came in and saved the day in the second half of Sunday. He came in and said, hey, Coach, he told Lark, he said, hey, go home. I got the second half of the day. So he kindly volunteered himself to come by and cover the second half of the day. So, the trainers were there, that, they were taken care of. And I thought Saturday went really well.
Yeah, the behind-the-scenes stuff. And then by the time you get to Sunday, then you're watching, Coach Evie Vasquez on the sideline prior to her game with Morgan Perales, with Janae Coleman over there strategizing, okay, well when you're in the game, who do we want to put with you? And then what do you think they're going to put on the other team? And the real strategy was going on behind the scenes in the coaches, again, talking about trying to win. Yeah,
they certainly were. And they, well, heck, they had a walkthrough Saturday morning at 11 a.m. at Economides. And that's another thing, too. Mari Campos at Economides, Lucio Rodriguez at Vela, Oscar Salinas at La Feria, Coach Ashley Monsivais and Clayton Creeders at Harlingen, Coach Mari Chilar at Santa Rosa. Let's see who else. Coach Jaime Gonzalez at Harvest Christian, Coach Nicole Villarreal at Pioneer. Thank all you guys for opening your gym up, and I did my best to make every practice. Coach Trevino at Mercedes and Adame, they also hosted a practice. Thank you guys for opening your doors and allowing our teams to go in there and practice on your gym floor, use your basketballs, and allowing our teams to go out there. That was a huge part of it too.
It was.
Is these coaches allowing us to go into their house and practice there whenever it need be. So that was a plus, and Jaime for he provided us with a lot of the game balls on the girls' side, Erasmo on the boys' side with MMA, and Ernie Silva from Triple Double. He loaned us a lot of his basketballs, and so all those little pieces were very big in making this weekend possible.
Again, it was a lot of fun. The 2023 version of the basketball showcase for Rio Sports Live. Congratulations again, the trophy, Rebels, boys, girls. But there's a storyline behind that as well for those fans that are curious, that were questioning. Last year when we put that committee together, we put a basketball committee together to try to look at what formulas are going to work best to build this thing to make it work. The year before we wanted to do it, but COVID stepped in, and that's when Brian Pinkerton said, hey, we still got the island. I can still get some players. Let's play. Last year was our true first showcase. But we started it with a committee in which we primarily had the RGV coaches involved. And we asked them straight up, if we're bringing in the best teams from outside the RGV, if we're potentially putting together a team comprised of private schools, and we're going to bring the best that they can bring, then when it comes to putting the team that is on there for the RGV, do you want to put one together that says, okay, I don't want to be sitting there saying, well, if we had this girl with this girl or this guy with this guy, then the RGV could compete and beat the Coastal Bend, could beat the private schools. And so that's what we did beginning of last year, and that's why we stacked those two teams. Now, my ultimate transition in that is that I wanted to do it from year one. I, again, wanted to do it this year. Just wasn't into play to put it together. But next year, I firmly believe we'll have everyone sign up. We'll have a full week for the coaches to do the research, and then we'll have a draft night in which we assign ping pong balls, draw out the first draft order, and with the first pick in the draft for the Rio Sports Live Showcase, Coach Zamaripa, Coach Evie Vasquez, Coach Yates selects and let them pick, and then the fun begins of being able to put together teams based on who the coaches want on their team.
Yeah, it's funny because Coach Yates, I mean, they really enjoyed it, but it's funny how, he had Coach Itzeta and Coach Sanchez help him, and that used to be the old staff at Harlingen before Coach Creeders was there. So for them, that meant a lot to kind of coach all over again together, and then jokingly they were like, Doc Lee's going to be our GM, so. They were joking like, okay, Doc's the GM and Yates is the coach, and then here the plays are gonna run. So they had a lot, of fun with it, to make it to your point. But to all the coaches that also decided to, or not decided, but the coaches that wanted to come out and help us and did, that also meant a lot too. Little bit of a chore having to find coaches, and from what I'm understanding now is that an active coach can coach so long as their kids aren't on that team.
Right.
So that's news to me, and I'm like, if I'd have known that, I mean, there's different ways we could have gone about it. But last year, speaking on last year, the angle we went was trying to get old school coaches, Hall of Fame coaches that want to put on a whistle one more time and share some of their knowledge. So the crazy thing with Alexa Torres was that she met Coach Z back when she was getting into junior high, and growing up, Coach Torres Arnold, her dad over at BVM, was coaching against Coach Z when Alexa was a little kid, and Coach Z always teased Arnold that, like, I'm gonna get Alexa to go to Harlingen. She's gonna be a Lady Cardinal. She's gonna be a Lady Cardinal, and she always wanted to play for Coach Z. So growing up, she knew who she was, and then she said, this year I just happened to really play for Coach Z. So she said, that meant a lot to me, that finally when I was a 10, 12-year-old kid, Coach Z always had her eye on me and always wanted me to go to Harlingen. But she goes, now that I actually got to play for her, she goes, that was actually a pretty cool deal.
So basketball is in the books, and therefore what's on the horizon? Well, Jacob Young's going to be joining us in a little bit. We'll talk about the RSL Soccer Showcase. But also, Kevin, let's not drop the lead here on the season that's in place right now, and that's softball and the RSL Softball Showcase, which will be year 2 of that showcase. Dates are set on that, June 23rd, 24th, 25th. Rosters will begin construction, and so we put one season away and ramp into the other one. Let's first talk a little bit about the showcase and how we're going to construct that RSL Showcase on the softball side, which is June 23rd, 24th, and 25th in Raymondville.
Right, yeah. I'm right now tentatively we're looking at Raymondville again. I know they want us back, and I'm more than happy to go back because just from a facility standpoint, it makes sense. It's turf. So the other night when I forgot who I was talking to, but I said it's turf, and we don't have to worry about the weather. And then another thing hit me like, we don't have to rake. Yes. We don't need someone to rake the field after the game because that'd be another hassle to find someone to rake the darn thing. But from a production standpoint, we made it pop last year. As far as our production goes, for the seating, the seating in left field, kind of a Crawford box look out in left, and then the chain link fence out there, and left center, right field. encourage people to bring their lawn chairs and sit out there. People were bringing their pop-up tents. I mean, they're travel well parents. They've done it many times, so they have a PhD in that. So that all works well. And then the seating that is there behind home plate and between first and third base, it's covered, so fans can sit comfortably there. The dugouts, they have more than enough space. It's turf. It's right off 77, so teams from Corpus that are coming down, it's not a hard drive. You just hop on 77, go south for an hour, and it's right there. So I thought that's a plus there. And then for us in the Valley, I mean, the kids are going to come, whether they're from La Jolla, Harlingen, Edinburgh, McAllen. They're going to come to Raymondville. So we're looking, again, 6 teams, 3 from the Valley, 3 from the Coastal Bend, and, 12 on each team. And we're going to, the same formula I used last year. I'm going to get a committee together. We're going to have a meeting place, and right now I did the math. I'm looking at for our committee members to bring in a list of 50 of their best players, and we're going to sit there at a table, and we're going to hash out and divide these teams and
put the egos, put the
absolutely,
aside.
That's what, last year it was Tracy Blackman, it was Debbie Esparza, myself, Kevin Knipe, Brett Esparza, and Orlando Garcia. And I felt each and every one of them put their 2 cents in with some brutal honesty and unbiased. And I've always said, because when people were like, oh, why not this kid or why not that kid? I said, if you could have just been a fly on the wall and sat and stuck on the wall for 3 hours at that table, you would have looked at this whole thing differently. Would have been like, okay, yeah, that is hard, because it's very hard to sit there. But yeah, there's no secret there. That's the formula that we're going to go with, and we're going to go 12, 12, and 12. And, right now we're looking at, 3 pitchers, 2 catchers, and then we're going to fill out the rest of the roster. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's certainly, in my brain, I'm already, there's going to be no shortage of pitchers.
Right.
There's going to be plenty of pitchers this year that I'm really excited to see. From west of the valley all the way down here to the lower end of the valley. So that's what we're looking at there. And the Coastal Bend, too, there's more than enough talent to make 3 different teams. And I'm thinking of 3 teams right now that we can just take those 3 and make that into 2 teams almost, if you're looking at 12, 12, and 12. So I'm really excited about that. Friday, I believe that's the 23rd. We are looking at having the home run derby that night.
Yeah. Learned a lesson from last year that's a cool event. It needs to be on its own.
Right. It needs to be on its own, and we're taking a page out of basketball and putting it on a Friday night. Right now, tentatively, I'm looking for either we'll decide this. Nothing's official yet, but as far as the uniforms, we can either hand them out that night at the opening ceremony, or if we do it right, we can hand them out beforehand, and the kids can come dressed in their uniform. There's a few things that we'll iron out, but I think the home run derby is going to be big Friday night, and I mean, Lily Rocha's invited. she won it last year. She's a senior this year, so we'll put that out there. That's an obvious one that she's going to be back to defend that crown, and I'll say we're going to have 8 kids in the home run derby, the same way we had last year, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The way that turned out, so many people had so much fun with that, with the clock and how we managed it. And I think that's going to be another big deal. And again, at the end of June. So I talked with some travel ball coaches, and that's the weekend where most teams are free to come on down. So the 23rd to the 25th down in Raymondville. We've already made a phone call to Coach Frank Cantu.
Yep.
I was talking to Coach Adriana Garza earlier today on our way over here, and she's excited about that. But she's like, before that, I got to play Alice in the first round of the playoffs.
Yes.
So I'm like, hey, you're going to have your work cut out for you right there, girl. But just giving her the heads up. And ironically, around this time last year, I told her, I said, hey, why not here? And I was like, their turf was just brand new last year, and it worked out really well, and I fully believe it'll work out again this year. And knowing what we know now, I think we can do things a lot cleaner. We already have dates set up that are in stone for us on a production.
Oh, production.
On a production side, last year we didn't have that.
Yes.
So that's why I feel a little more comfortable, and we know more on how to do it. But the thing last year was the home run derby, and then of course the talent. As kids were coming in and out, especially at the end of the tournament, they said, "Man, we played some serious talent. We felt that we learned some things. We played against some girls that can really get it. We got some girls that can really that whip that ball in there. So I think that's my goal again this year, is to put a quality product on the field this year for the showcase, and excited.
Excited. That's going to be our softball showcase coming up in June. Now, if you are a business out there that is watching this, that wants to be a part of this, obviously we'll be looking for sponsors for the Home Run Derby, for the jerseys. Some spots are available within our broadcast as well. And so if you have a business, or if you know a business owner, have them reach out to me so we can get you in our program to be a part of our broadcast and to be a part of our showcase. With the sponsorship, we can do a lot more with it to make it even a bigger event. Speaking of sponsorships, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the current softball season. And again, soccer fans, hang in there, because Jacob Young is going to talk soccer and what he got to cover this past week and what happened in the RGV, especially in soccer in the history books with another state champion crown. We'll be right back after this on Rio Sports Live from Luke Fruia Motors in Brownsville, Texas. Buick, GMC, Cadillac, Luke Fruia Motors. Back after this.
I invite you to visit San Benito and see for yourself the many things this community has to offer. Our offices of economic development offer a variety of business resources to developers, investors, and business owners from small to large scale. Contact us and let us work together on your next business opportunity.
Just listen to me.
Escucha.
Do everything with speed.
Prontísimo.
Out of home business service.
Flexible.
Insurance for all your
Barato.
needs. You say you just got a new boat. Come on by and we'll give you a free quote.
Prontísimo.
Okay, who's singing near you? Hello?
Accesible.
Come on.
Pregúntale a tu agente cómo ahorrar con Pronto, porque más barato, nadie.
For quality care, contact Mesquite Home Health and Attendant Services today. In Brownsville at 594 Jose Marti Boulevard. Call today, 956-361-5558.
We here at Mesquite want to wish all local athletes good luck in today's game.
De ropa, lo que se me antoja, dinero en el banco. Muchos me andan criticando, pues traigo carrazos que cómo le hago. Tengo aseguro del bueno, pronto y flexible y sale barato. Es mi corrido humilde, que no se te olvide que me ando ahorrando.
Ask your agent how you can start saving with Pronto. Best price in town.
Back here, Luke Fruia Motors, talking sports on a Wednesday afternoon here as we close out April already. And we've been talking about our basketball showcase. We're talking about our upcoming softball showcase. And leads us right into some additional softball talk. Kevin, game of the week this week. We'll be giving out a $250 scholarship thanks to our assistants on the sponsorship side from Pronto Insurance. And the game this week has a lot of meaning.
Yes.
When the playoffs are just around the corner.
Yes, Westlaco East at Harlingen South. That's our game of the week, and we're at the finish line, and I felt that this district was going to be the best district we had this year as far as just the competitive standpoint. The last 3-5 years, the Queens have been the 32-6A. But this year that 32-5A with Mercedes, Brownsville Lopez, Harlingen South, Westlaco East, Brownsville Veterans. I mean, it was a gauntlet of a district, and especially with Harlingen South moving down into 5A, it added a little jolt to it, and at the right timing too, because everyone's kind of in the same class. Not too many teams were senior heavy, more than one, but I felt whoever stayed the healthiest was going to come out of this district on top. And Mercedes only lost one game in that district.
Mm-hmm.
They won last night against Donna North. There's still one more game on Friday, but they're the district champs of that district with just one loss, only to Lopez. And then you have Harlingen South, Westlaco East. That game still has a lot of pop to it because we're going to decide who's the 2, who is the 3. And then you have Brownsville Veterans, who's going to be Brownsville Lopez, who's going to be the 4 seed. And here's the crazy thing. Brownsville Veterans has 11 wins, and they are not in the playoffs.
And they can't get there. Wow, 11 wins.
Take that and stew on it for a minute. And I can see them winning on Friday, so they're going to finish with 12 wins and not be in the playoffs.
That's
crazy.
Just
think of that, and that speaks on how crazy that district was. For veterans, Brownsville Veterans, they got swept by Mercedes. They lost that first round matchup in 11 innings at a 4-hour marathon, and Andrea Chapa had the game-winning run, sliding in at home. She was called out at the plate. Second baseman makes an error. Would have been the third out. She catches it. Zell doesn't get an opportunity to tie the game. There were so many angles in that game. Not to discredit how well Zell Camacho pitched in that game, because the girl, she pitched her tail off in that game, going all 11 innings. I think her pitch count was a 150 maybe. She served it up for them. But for veterans, they lost to Lopez earlier in the year. They lost to Westlaco East. So offensively they struggled to get anything going against quality pitching, and that's all that district was. And for Harlingen South, they were surging for a bit. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get Yezi Bettis back in the starting lineup. That was a big loss for them, and a little disappointing that we didn't get to see that team at full strength with Yezi back, because like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, getting Vasquez back was a big jolt, and then the anticipation was that Yezi was going to be okay. She was going to come back, be in the leadoff spot, at least in my brain. Then she'd play shortstop and just really extend that lineup, offensively and defensively. But, again, unfortunately, she wasn't able to come back, so her year is done. But, South continues to continue to win. They were able to beat Lopez. They came back and beat Lopez the week before last. And I apologize. Last week was all basketball. And, I know Harlingen, they barely lost to San Benito 2-0. Harlingen lost an extra innings to Los Fresnos yesterday, so there was a lot I missed out on, and I get that, but that district certainly didn't skip a beat. And Harlingen South coming back and beating Lopez was a really, really big win for them. They needed that one at home. Lexi Sandoval is playing really, really well for Harlingen South. And for Westlaco East, they've lost a few games along the way. They felt that they should have won, but now it just comes down to, you're going to be the 2, you're going to be the 3, and then who are you going to face on the other end? And right now, Pioneer and PSJ North, they're both 15-2 with 1 game left. I can imagine they're both going to win, and they'll end up with the same record. And Monday they'll have a seeding game at Pioneer, which I'm planning on going.
There for that?
Yeah, no, I already. No, you don't have to tell me. Respectfully, you don't have to tell me. I've already have plans for Monday. That'll be a rematch. Those two split, so they'll have to decide the 1 and 2 seed, and then that'll help determine on this end for Harlingen South and Westlaco East. But the way I saw it was Mercedes, Lopez, Harlingen South, Brownsville Veterans, and it ended up Mercedes, Harlingen South, Westlaco East, Lopez. So, but you could have thrown those. Ed Calchelsa is a game under 500. And they're the 6th place team.
Yep.
They're the 6th place team. So that district was just a lot of fun. So there's still a lot to be decided there. And then in the Corpus district, I don't get the zoning Have you kept up with that at all?
Not
the
this
zoning,
year, no.
the zoning, it's an odd thing, and how they split them into zones, and then they're going to meet each other to determine the district champion. So you take the top seed from Zone East and Zone West, and then those two play, and then the next two seeds, and then that's going to determine the 2 and the 3, the 3 and the 4, etc. So I really wasn't too much of a fan of it because it's too confusing. But I know a lot of coaches down here had to kind of sit put and wait and see, okay, that team's going to play this team's going to play that team, and how the district standings wound up falling. But on that side, Flower Bluff won their district, and then Gregory Portland finished in second, Carroll finished in third, and then Corpus Christi Veterans finished fourth. See, I didn't need my phone. That was the final standings in the 29-5A. So, they're going to have to meet up against, the Romas, the Rio Grande City wound up winning that district, Mission Veterans, and Roma, all in that side of that district. So that'll be the first round matchup with the 35A and the 29-5A. And then down here, the 31 and the 32 will play each other. And in the second round is where it gets interesting on when I think the 29-5A, they cannot overlook the 35A. And that's, Desi Signs of Rio Grande City. That's Mickey Castillo, Mission Veterans, and Aria Lenise at Palmview. I think that I mean, just too much pitching. There's a lot of really good pitching on that end. Corpus Christi Veterans, they still have Maddie. They still have Alyssa Burge. They finished in fourth. Gregory Portland finished in second. But Carol's got a lot of offense. Caitlin Mendez in the leadoff spot. I think she's had a great year. Carol's had a great year. They lost in extra innings against La Jolla earlier this year when we got to see them. And then Flower Bluff, Jade Moreno's still there. And she's their ace in the hole. And Samaya Johnson, who's, if I understand right, she's still playing first base for Flower Bluff. She made the move from center to first base. But that second round is going to be very, very interesting to see, what the matchup's going to be. But I think, the 35A is very underrated. It's less talked about. And I think that only makes it more compelling to see how that first round will match up with them in the 29-5As. I can see a split happening there because our teams are that good on the 35A side. And then into the third round, that's when you can circle back to where a team like a Mercedes or a Harlingen South can still be alive in the third round and maybe meet a Rio Grande City again, or a possible Carroll or a Flower Bluff, or depending on how all that falls out. So the first 3 rounds are going to be very, very good. 32-6A, San Benito swept Westlaco last night, and they ran the table 10-0. There's really no secret there. I still think they're the number 1 team, hands down, if you ask me right now. Just from their pitching, their fielding, their hitting. Joe Montes behind the plate, and then with Nemo, and then Amari in the circle. That's as good as a 1-2-3 punch you'll get. And then Bethany playing second base, and Kylie Sanchez at first base. Their infield's at a whole other speed. Yep. Their infield's at a whole other speed. And congratulations to Harlingen too. The Lady Cards, they did it. They made the playoffs. They hadn't been there since 2017, and between then and now, there's a lot of turbulence in the program. I felt that team should have been in the playoffs every year or every other year, considering the district they were in with Westlaco and Harlingen South and how deep 32-6A was. Last year people could have made a case they could have made it. The year before, so it was good for that program. They're getting in at 4 and 6, but at the end of the day, it don't matter. You're in. That's what counts at the end of the day. Yep. It's baffling to think that a Veterans is going to finish with 12 wins, double that, and they're out.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
But that's just the district that they're in. So at La Jolla, I need to check on this. I know they did lose to PSJ. I know they each have a loss apiece. I need to see if they're going to have a seeding game down there in that 31-6A. But La Jolla, they're still, anytime you have Arlette, she's probably the best pitcher we have, if not one of the best, because there's so many arms this year that we have down here in the valley. So that's on the 31-6A side. The 4A side, prende la vela. Light a candle. Light a candle, man, because it's gonna be tough. Raymondville is gonna have to play Alice. Port Isabel is gonna have to play Cal Allen. Robstown's gonna play La Zapata. I'm missing one more. Toloso Midway is going to play La Feria. Oh, it's tough. It's so tough because the 4As. We've run into some rough years. These last few years in 4A, and then it's like, damn man, like you got to give me Cal Allen in the first round or Alice. I mean Alice this year. My goodness, they're going to win that district. They had a hiccup against Bishop, who's surging all of a sudden. Good for them. Offensively, we knew they were going to be really good, but I mean Alice is really really good.
Yep.
Ava Hernandez is a true 67, 68. 2 weeks ago when I saw her pitch against Cal Allen, I mean, she really, really brought it. And that's when you've got it, is because Cal Allen's seen her. You know each other. Normally, advantage what? Hitter, right? But, I mean, the way Ava pitched that night, I mean, she was lights out. Gabby Chapa, Bri Castillo, Mary Grace Cantu. I mean, they're a very, very good softball team in 4A. And I mean, don't sleep on Cal Allen. I mean, they're very, very, very young. They have 4 freshmen in their starting lineup. Losing Brooklyn Metter at the early part of the year, people are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, okay, take Jordan Alvarez out of the Astros lineup. The run production, a bat. It was a huge, huge loss for them. But Coach Lentz certainly has had her work cut out for her, and credit to Audrina Alvarez, who's a freshman, now having to step in and play catcher, moving from first base to catcher. So, I mean, they're very, very young. They're junior heavy, but there's a lot of freshmen there that have showed a lot of potential. So, that's the wrap on the 4A side, and playoffs start next week.
Playoffs start next week. Now, again, note to fans. UIL still is in total control of how the playoffs are operating. They're doing it with the NFHS network, and we made the decision not to partner with the NFHS network once we saw how it played out in volleyball and football. And so we're not part of a pay-per-view platform in which to broadcast games. Now, we have had school districts that have reached out to us on occasion in the playoffs, asking us if we'll assist them with an educational broadcast. It's not on our platforms. We don't put it anywhere on Real Sports Live. We can't brand it as Real Sports Live, but we certainly are willing and able and capable to assist schools in broadcasting with educational broadcast. So if any playoff coverage comes through anything having to do with us, it's going to be strictly on an educational, instructional option, which we are open to with school districts that reach out. Otherwise, our playoff coverage will be non-existent in softball. There is legislation in the state of Texas that is trying to prevent this happening next year and trying to open some doors for entities that broadcast such as ours on a free platform, and so those of you in politics, I'm not in politics, Kevin's not in politics, but we are watching politics as there is some legislation trying to be moved through the state of Texas in which it allows options other than the pay-per-view platforms. But again, playoffs, once they get to playoffs, NFHS, UIL, it will not be Real Sports Live being a part of that. Play-in games, we'll be there. We'll find our way to get to those big games on the play-in games. But as far as playoffs, just note, it's not that we don't want to be. It's not that we haven't been in the past. We want to. We just don't want to get involved in making it where people are having to pay to watch games on something we're broadcasting. We'll take a break. When we come back, Jacob Young will join us. Kevin and I will break down softball next Wednesday because that's the day before the playoffs begin, and we'll really have the total picture as far as what's happening. But our game of the week is at Harlingen South. It is Friday. It's our Pronto Game of the Week. We'll be handing out a $250 scholarship prior to the game, and so we invite you to come out, be a part of the big crowd, and see those two teams play for that second and third spot. But we also want to invite you to be out and be a part of our Pronto Insurance Game of the Week and see the presentation of the check there. That's grown a lot since we started giving those checks out in volleyball and football season, and I know that they're eager to have us there as part of that broadcast. We'll come back. We'll talk a little state championship side on the soccer level. Jacob Young joins us next. We're at Luke Fruia Motors in Brownsville, Texas. Buick, GMC, and Cadillac on a Wednesday. Back after this. Music lovers, you have to stop and see the assortment of records, tapes, and records memorabilia at Forever Memories today. Located at 237 North Sam Houston in San Benito, Texas, there's over 10,000 records on display and more coming every day. Looking for your favorite album from the past, first pressings, collectibles? How about a 45 with a single you just have to have? Freddie Fender, Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, Elvis, Beatles, blues, rock, classics, Tejano, it's all here. Organized and priced for you. Forever Memories, 237 North Sam Houston, San Benito. We are back here at Look For You Motors, and we switched gears from, we went from basketball to softball. Now let's switch gears to soccer. Jacob Young joins me, the voice of RSL Soccer, and he was in Round Rock this past weekend and got to see some state championship games. And Jacob Young, charter schools didn't disappoint in bringing it on the middle school and the high school levels.
Yeah, they did not disappoint one bit. Of course, it was upsetting for the Valley, to be exact, at the start for the defending champions. I want to say RGVFC Toros, but just the defending champions Idea Toros to be eliminated. But again, talking about that first game that we got to see from that perspective, they were just outplayed. They had a lot of speed, but the other team, Garland High School, they were just able to really, really, really be aggressive, and they had more physicality on their side too, and that's what really propelled them to be that better side, being able to really be a little bit more on the leadership side too, and just take advantage of not necessarily the depth but the height disadvantage that the Toros had on that first game, and coming straight into that and being able to defeat the defending champions like that. That was the final game of the day. But just that first day with the high school, it had that momentum of, okay, we see what the really, really good teams are going to be, and we see what this matchup could potentially hold, because it was an early day the next day, I believe, 9 a.m. for the championship for the varsity side. And so we saw instantly what those two games and what those two teams could bring to the table for that Saturday morning game.
Well, we saw we talked about the differences prior to you leaving out for Round Rock, that indeed you were going to see different styles come into play, and opportunities for teams to take advantage of size, of quickness, of speed, of the premier players, and that all came into play in Round Rock up there. But it did open up some things again that the Rio Grande Valley sends competition up there on a regular basis, and is competitive.
Yeah. It's very competitive indeed. I didn't expect to see so much competitive style of play. We knew it was going to be something like it, but we just did not expect to necessarily. Well, to be fair, I didn't know what I was going to see when I came up there. I knew it was my first time, and it was going to be very exciting either way of what would happen. But I was just looking forward to seeing some great soccer in general, and sure enough, that's exactly what I got to see. And I got to just witness that these teams, again, these players, they can go, a couple of them could definitely go D1. A couple of them could definitely, even if they didn't necessarily want to take that path, could go into like an MLS Next program or something like that and really take off from there with their careers if that's what they wanted to do in the future. So that's that level of where it's at.
Next thing up is the UIL side, and Jacob Young, it's almost become the norm to say what team in the Rio Grande Valley is going to hoist the state championship. We had another one this year.
100%, and this is the coolest part, because leading up to it, reading Twitter, looking at all of that, seeing how excited Hidalgo High School were after the regionals to be able to go up to state. Of course, Sherryland High School, same deal, to see them going up to state and being excited of saying, hey, we have a chance to hoist another one. I have a chance to, since I'm an alum, add another ring because they all get rings. And so that was really cool to see. 2009 being for Hidalgo High School, 2012 being for Sherryland High School. Unfortunately for Sherryland, they weren't able to get they weren't able to go out of the first round of the state semis. But for Hidalgo, that was a different story. And for them to be able to just even go up and hoist it was even crazier, considering I kind of called it from the start, knowing that first game, if Hidalgo got past that team, it looked like they really didn't have any trouble to get past the second one, and sure enough.
And they hoisted a state trophy. So that brings us into our next thing. We just recently completed the basketball showcase. Jacob, we're going to have our first ever soccer showcase, and it's going to take place on June 17th and 18th. And the way the format's going to play out is going to be 4 boys teams, 4 girls teams, comprised of 20 players and 2 keepers for each team. Comes out to 176 players. Jacob, if we get the right invites coming into this showcase, fans are going to truly see a high level of soccer played.
100%. It's going to be something that I don't think we've really ever seen down here in the Valley, considering every player potentially meeting up and playing at a higher level than they have kind of ever played. Besides, yes, players have gotten to see the state side a couple of times. Teams and players have gotten to see the regional side a couple of times as coaches. But, of course, when it gets into that UIL role state, that a coach that has coached high school cannot be the coach for past the season.
Yes.
So that of course, is the rule. So taking out that and just putting in most likely player coaches or something like that, it's going to be very interesting to see how they can adapt to it. And, of course, with just the players in general, we know that they have talent and we know that they have skill. It's going to be fun.
Charter schools mixed in with the UIL schools, just like the basketball showcase. I don't think there's going to be a drop in talent level. Jacob, they're going to join the mix of the Hidalgos, the Sherrylands, the McAllens, the Brownsvilles, and I think they're going to enhance those players and those teams. There won't be a drop-off in talent when the substitutions occur.
Not at all. And that's the coolest part about this, is that just being able to see it. And that's what last weekend, so thankful for it too, for you allowing me to go cover that, because not being able to see the TCS AAL side, the charter school side of things, even for me covering this season with Brownsville St. Joseph Academy, I came from a UIL background only, and so getting to see these private schools being very talented and almost sometimes a little bit better than a couple of schools from down here for UIL, and then seeing again how much the middle schools from the charter schools took care, or not care, but how much they cared about winning a state title for that. How
and the
much
talent they brought.
Exactly. And so bringing that over is just it's going to enhance it. Just like you said, it's going to make things even better. And these players, of course, never playing with each other or against each other. Now you're going to get to see something. I really hope it brings a lot of attention and just to the Valley and just to soccer in general. And my hope, my goal, of course, with all those players is to get those players recognition, just in case they want to go to that next level and get potentially signed by an academy too.
And anytime you have a college wanting to see players and measure them, they always are looking for that case in which, well, give me that game in which you were playing against someone that is comparable talent. And so when you're looking at, it's one thing to say, well, we're going to put 20 players on a team. And you think, well, that's a pretty big roster. But then when you rotate them in 10 in and 10 out, 10 players, Jacob, when you're just looking at the lower valley, and you're talking about coming from Brownsville St. Joseph, all of the Brownsville schools, the Jubilees, alone, just to put 20 kids on one team, you're leaving a lot of talent home, but you're certainly putting some stellar talent on the field.
Yes, 100%. Yes, we're probably not going to be able to fit everybody in that would most likely make it all the time, but at that same time, you're going to have these players that well, yeah, like we said, made it to regionals, made it to this far, playing stellar games against. We look back at Valley View and Lopez, that game when Lopez advanced. How crazy that one was! We have at least 4 players right there from an all-tourney team from just them alone, and then, of course, another 4 from Brownsville St. Joseph, where they just again were able to ignite this fire in them after the start of the season, not looking too great, and finally looking really good because Jubilee, when they played a friendly against them, they tied 4-4, and it didn't look like that they knew what necessarily they wanted from each player, too. So now, of course, with them being brought in, it's just, yeah, it's going to be a very, very cool thing with all the talent in this part, and I mean, I absolutely love it.
June 17th, June 18th, our soccer showcase will take place, and it's the same format as our other showcases, in which it's going to feature players that are underclassmen as well as seniors. It'll feature private, public schools, and it'll be in a setting in which it's a showcase, but it's got a trophy involved, which means they're going to be playing to win. And I think that's the neatest part of what you watch as these showcases transpire, is that as the players and coaches start to get it, that we're in it to have fun, but we got a chance to win. Day 1, 2 boys games. Day 1, 2 girls games. And then winners play winners, losers play losers. By the time we get to those 2 championship games, Jacob, wow, some soccer at a high level.
Definitely, it's going to be, it's going to be something special, and I'm hoping that it's going to be a great game to where potentially it could be a very crazy defensive game. that could also be a dream, because you want to have those 2 keepers working defensively, clearing soccer balls at the goal line and things like that. Potentially, possession as even as can be. That's, of course, the dream. You want to keep it possibly defensive, because at that same time, you're showing, these 2 teams, they know exactly what to do. They know exactly that they are the best, that these 2 teams are the best in the Valley, even though it's just an all-star game. But we picked the right players. And sure enough, that's exactly showing that we have the best players, because it's evenly matched, and that's at the highest level possible, and 90% of the shots are on target. A couple of them might be off target, but that is a key look at. That's exactly the level of talent.
A-level strikers, A-level defenders that mark those strikers, and then keepers that are the best of the best that are going to be in there. Again, watch for more information. The invitations are going to start going out perhaps even as early as tonight for our Rio Sports Live Soccer Showcase, which is June 17th and 18th. Again, a program note that our softball showcase is June 23rd and 24th, with a home run derby on the 23rd, games on the 24th, championship day on the 25th. So 2 more showcases coming up on the RSL network. In addition to, we'll continue on with broadcasting of our games. Our softball showcase, or our softball game of the week this week, is the Weslaco East and Harlingen South game. We're also going to have baseball coverage. We'll have additional softball coverage. Again, we're busier than ever as far as getting things together. But note to soccer fans, pass the word. Yes, we're going to have a showcase, and it's going to take place on June 17th and 18th. Jacob Young, thanks for chiming in on soccer, and you and I have to get busy. We have to get these teams put together, and we'll chat again soon.
Sir, thank you for having me, of course.
For Rio Sports Live, that's going to do it for our broadcast here at Luke Fruia Motors, home of Buick, GMC, and Cadillac. Again, I talk about it all the time, that all of our broadcasts are free of charge. We don't charge fans. We don't charge schools to broadcast the games, and they're free of charge. Why we're able to do that is because of sponsors like Luke Fruia Motors. Luke Fruia Motors has been a sponsor with us. They started last year, took a little pause during the summer, came right back, and were big time with us through football season on. And so it's the sponsors like Luke Fruia Motors that provide us the advertising platform in which to get our crews out there and to be able to cover the games we do. We thank Luke Fruia Motors, we ask you as viewers to thank Luke Fruia Motors by if you're in the business or in the market of a used or a new car, well, this is your spot. The lot's full. They just pulled the car in right behind our camera here during our show. So the showroom is full with Buick, GMC, and Cadillac, and obviously the used car lot also is loaded with vehicles, and the service is top-notch. I was told before we even had them as a sponsor that Luke Fruia Motors was number one in service, and so it's a spot if you're in the market for a car, new, used, ready to trade. Come see Luke Fruia Motors if you're watching our stuff here on Rio Sports Live. If nothing more, just to say thank you for being a part of it. And if you're not in the market for a car, then again, same thing. Right off the expressway here in Brownsville, Texas, pop in and just say, hey, if nothing else, thank you for being a sponsor on Rio Sports Live, for allowing them to cover the athletes that they do. So from Luke Fruia Motors, I'm Joe Bowling for Kevin Naro, for Rudy Zamaripa Jr., for Jacob Young.